If you're about to purchase your first home in the Atlanta area, the information I'm about to share with you is crucial to making sure you have a good experience. There is so much conflicting information about real estate agents and real estate in general. I often find that first-time home buyers are kind of focused on things that they don't need to be focused on, and they're not focused on the really important stuff that they should have their eye on. So let's dive right into 10 crucial tips for buying your first home in Atlanta. Tip number 1 is hire a good realtor. Now, a lot of people have negative perceptions of realtors based on a lot of different reasons, but the reality is a good realtor is worth their weight in gold. And many people are confused as to what a good realtor really offers you. And I could talk a lot about this, but at the end of the day, the value that a realtor provides you is not about opening doors or sending you listings. The real value that a great realtor is going to provide you is guidance through the process. They're going to take all the information you provided them and help you accomplish the goals that you set out to achieve. The other major piece of value they're going to provide is helping you to win an offer. And this does require a lot of experience because many agents don't understand what it takes to write a winning offer. Now, the biggest mistake I see people make with this category is they hire someone they know, like a relative, that doesn't end up having a lot of experience. The most important factor for most people in hiring a realtor is feeling like they can trust that person. But if you hire a realtor that you trust because someone that you know knows them, but that realtor doesn't actually have a lot of sales experience, you could be running into a problem. So I would strongly encourage you to research and hire a realtor that has a lot of experience in the specific area that you're looking to buy. Remember, it's very easy to get your real estate license, so there's a big risk here of working with someone who really doesn't have any experience and can end up really costing you a lot of money. Tip number 2 is the lender that you hire matters more than you may think. And the biggest mistakes I see buyers make in this category is using a really big bank like a Rocket Mortgage or a Wells Fargo. That's usually a mistake because these banks move very slow, they have poor customer service, and they are less likely to help you win an offer if you're competing against other people with faster lenders. The other big mistake I see people make with lenders is using an out-of-state lender. Real estate contracts are specific to each state, so every time I have a client who wants me to work with an out-of-state lender, I have to now explain all the contracts and processes of selling real estate in Georgia to that lender. And very often, this slows down the process and decreases your chances of winning an offer. You really want to hire a local lender who has a lot of experience and it can move very quickly. When all the numbers are the same in competing offers, it's the time frames that are going to make the difference between winning and losing. So when you're interviewing lenders, make sure you're asking them how quickly they can return an appraisal when ordered, what's the fastest time frame they can close in, and if you call them on Sunday, are they gonna pick up the phone? Trust me, I have had people choose the wrong lender, whether it was a big bank or out-of-state lender, and it ended up costing them a lot of money. So make sure you're very thoughtful about which lender you work with. Tip number 3 is don't terminate over small stuff. When people see an inspection report for the first time, they get very overwhelmed because they're in-depth and it covers everything that's going on with the home. And often they can get nervous and just want to terminate and find something that doesn't have any issues. And very often this can be a terrible decision. It's not the quantity of items that come up on an inspection report, it's the quality, or rather the cost associated with fixing that item. I always tell clients, we're looking for the big ticket items: roof, foundation, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. If there's no major issues with any of those major systems, then in all likelihood, we can work through the small stuff and probably move forward with the contract. However, if there is a significant issue with one of those major systems, we're gonna wanna bring in a specialist to see how much fixing that issue is gonna cost And if the seller is not willing to work with us on those repairs, then we may want to consider terminating. But it makes absolutely no sense to terminate a contract over really small piddly things like maybe some damaged siding, a little bit of rotted wood. Maybe you have an outlet that's supposed to be GFCI and it's not. Maybe you have a loose toilet bowl. That's a really common one. You're almost always going to see some evidence in rodents in houses. It doesn't mean it's infested. So there's a lot of things in these reports that can seem big and scary, but when you actually think and talk about what the dollar value is related to that item, it's not that big of a deal. So don't get spooked by these in-depth inspection reports. Make sure you're keeping the context of the needed repair in mind. Tip number 4 is make sure there is no time crunch in your process. By far, the biggest disaster scenarios that I've seen buyers go through is when their back is up against a wall from some life circumstance and they're forced to make a drastic decision. This could be, selling your house and having to be out and not having a place to move temporarily. So you feel like you have to buy something so you can move in somewhere. This could be your lease is about to expire and you don't want to renew, so you feel rushed to purchase something. It could be some timeline related to when your job is starting, but usually it comes down to not having a backup option for where you're going to stay if you don't purchase a house in a certain amount of time. And this causes a lot of stress, right? Which just affects all the different moving pieces in this process. And it increases the odds of making a hasty, bad decision and just really having this be an awful process for you. So you really want to think about all the things that could occur from the starting point of where you're at, whether you have to sell a house or you're moving across the country to get here. Think about your timelines and think about worst case scenarios. What you're gonna do if you don't find a house by a certain date. You need to have a backup plan, even if it's just researching an extended stay hotel or it's reaching out to a family member to see in a pinch if you can stay there for a few weeks. But you wanna look at the entire timeline of your process and make sure there is no major time crunch scenario. And if there is one, you got to create some backup plans because this is how deals can get really stressful. Number 5, and this is actually more common than you think, but it's be on the same page as your partner. Now, I've learned this over my career. You would think, people in a partnership would be on the same page about what they're looking for, about what's important to them, about what they don't want. A lot of times it's revealed that that hasn't been the case. I can give you a couple examples. I was looking with a family in the suburbs of Atlanta and we found a great home and we got it under contract. And then through the inspection process, the people realized they didn't want a pool. This home had a pool. They thought they wanted a pool. And then they ended up not being on the same page. One of the spouses was really stressed out. They had small children. They were worried about the safety issues related to owning a pool, and they decided to terminate that deal. And they got their earnest money back, but they did not get their inspection money back. They could have saved that money and that time if they had just thought through what is involved in owning a pool and been on the same page about if that's something they wanted to pursue. Another very common example would be wanting to be in the suburbs versus in town. When I work with clients, we've got to narrow this down because you can't search effectively in a huge area. We've got to narrow it down. We've got to know if we're looking in town or in the suburbs or another scenario. And I have had clients who tell me, okay, we're looking in the suburbs and we're looking at these houses and we find a house that checks all their boxes, everything they said that was important. And then they come and say, oh, but there's also this house that's right in the heart of the city that looks like it could be great too. And they're kind of not on the same page with one another about where they want to be. So most of these issues should really be taken care of at the beginning of the process and the conversations with your realtor about what you're really looking for and what your priorities are. But make sure you're on the same page with your partner about where you want to be, what type of home you want to be in, and what major features of the home you want to have in it or you don't want to have in it. Okay, don't just take it for granted that you're partners and you know each other really well. You really got to talk about and flesh out all the components of owning a home and make sure you're on the same page. And if you're not, you've got to compromise, or you've got to, find a middle ground somehow. But this is more common than you would think. So if you do have a partner in this process, make sure y'all are on the same page. All right, tip number 6 is don't be paranoid. This is a very nerve-wracking process for a lot of my first-time home buyers. And what I've found is they don't consciously know it, but subconsciously they think the seller is constantly trying to screw them and trying to manipulate and get one over on them, right? Whether it's they think the seller is trying to play games if, they told us they already have offers on the table, or something's wrong with the house and they think the seller didn't disclose it. There's all these scenarios. A lot of people will look at the pricing history, whether it's been, taken off the market or reduced sales price, and they're like, well, what's going on here? This seems fishy. And look, detailed due diligence is incredibly important. It's really something your realtor should be spearheading. But I will tell you, the overwhelming majority of sellers are normal people just like you. They're not trying to get one over on you. They're not trying to screw you. They're not trying to manipulate you. So you do want to do your due diligence. You don't need to take anyone at their word. You want to look at the disclosures. You want to get your own inspection company out there to give you their independent opinion. And of course, you're going to have the closing attorney looking at the chain of title to make sure everything's good there. But I have had clients that have either terminated or been very close to terminating just because they had a bad feeling. And I think some people are just more predisposed to being a little bit more, suspecting or paranoid, whatever word you want to use. And I get that. And this is a big purchase, right? So I'm not judging that. It's very important to take this seriously and to look at the facts and get your own professionals. But it can really affect negotiations and the overall transaction if you're looking at everything like the seller is out to get you. So just know that, I've done this quite a bit. There are scenarios where the sellers are not honest. It's much more common with an investor selling a flip. But I can tell you the overwhelming majority of sellers and even investors who are selling a flip, they care about their reputation. They're not trying to screw anyone. And usually there's a good explanation for whatever is going on in the transaction. So don't be too paranoid. Tip number 7 is never try to time the market. This is a classic mistake for a lot of people. What I found, I could talk about this topic for a long time, but the 2008 financial crisis and housing market crash had a massive psychological impact on our generation and how we perceive real estate cycles. And if you notice at any given time, right, whether it's the day that you're watching this video or if it's 5 years from now when you're watching this video, I guarantee there's someone on YouTube or on the news talking about how the real estate market is going to crash, right? That's a clickbait title. It's always going to get clicks. And so you're always going to have someone telling you the market is about to crash, you should wait. The reality is no one has a crystal ball and no one knows what the market is going to do, and waiting makes no sense whatsoever. For instance, why would you wait? Well, interest rates are high. I want to wait till they go down. Well, okay, do you know what happens when interest rates go down? The prices go through the roof and the competition goes through the roof, right? Or you want to wait for the prices to come down. Well, when the prices come down, usually the interest rates are higher and your buying power is lower. You want to wait for a crash so that you can capitalize on, lower prices. Well, guess what? When the market crash happened last time, no one was capitalizing on it, at least not, residential buyers. Investors were probably capitalizing on it, but when things crash, everything gets real tight and no one pulls the trigger, okay? So it does not make any sense to try to time the market. As soon as you are financially able to purchase real estate, you should do so, as long as you're buying something in your budget with a monthly payment that is very affordable for you. If that's your scenario, even if the market crashes and according to Zillow, your home is worth less than what you paid for it, who cares? If you have your job, you could still make your payments. It's kind of like your 401k. It may go down, but over the course of however many years, it's almost certainly going to increase in value to where you make a healthy profit. And after all, if you wait and don't buy and now you're renting, what are you doing? You're paying 100% interest to a landlord, right? So, it does give you flexibility and it may be cheaper to do that. And those are reasons why you maybe want to consider renting, but you should not consider continuing to rent because you're trying to time the market. I promise you, The people who do this end up sitting on the sidelines and really regretting not pulling the trigger. As long as you stay within your budget, and the way that I like to tell people to think about this is, think about your salary, think about if you got laid off, God forbid, how long do you think it would really take you to find a job that would give you a similar salary? Or if it's going to be a lower salary, what would that salary be? And then base what your monthly payment would be off whatever you feel like that type of job could be that you get after getting laid off. That was a bit of a word salad, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. I always work through worst case scenarios, right? You can afford this monthly payment because you have this kind of career. If you got laid off, could you quickly find a similar paying job? If you couldn't find a similar paying job, what could you find quickly? And then based on that projected salary, what comfortable monthly payment would you be good with? And then as long as you're buying within that range, you don't need to worry about the market cycles. Everyone needs shelter, right? And I think it's better to own shelter than to pay rent to a landlord. So don't try to time the market. Number 8, view this as an investment property. I think this is one of the best tips that you could have for your mindset in this process. Purchasing real estate, especially if it's your first home, can be kind of romantic. You can romanticize it in your head. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's very exciting to purchase a home. But the reality is, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, this is not your forever home. This is not your dream forever home. Statistically, even if you don't think this is true, you're going to probably sell this home and buy something new within 5 to 7 years, way shorter than people realize. So there's a big benefit to creating some detachment in this process and really looking at it from an investment perspective. After all, this is going to be one of the largest financial purchases you make in your life. So I think it makes a lot of sense to look at it like if you were investing money into some other kind of asset. So what does that mean? There's no one dream home, right? You never want to put all your eggs in a basket and go crazy with an offer because you have to have this home. If you don't get it, it wasn't meant to be, you'll get something better. There is no such thing as a dream home. There are always multiple homes that can check all the boxes of what's important to you and your family. This also means location is incredibly important, okay? This is an investment. You want to think about if you're going to go sell it in 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years, are you going to make a profit here? Is the area that you're buying growing? Is it a stabilized area, or is it one of these up and coming gentrifying areas that would have a little bit more risk? So, you really want to think about all the financial factors. Obviously, you're going to look at the comps to make sure you're not overpaying. But the bottom line is you don't want to fall in love and get attached to a home. It's going to cause stress and heartache if you don't win the offer. And it's going to influence you to go outside of your comfortable price range, which you never want to do. So I understand it's a home. It's very personal and important to you, but I would encourage you to take a little bit of a step back, detach yourself from it, and understand that at the end of the day, this is shelter and there's a lot of options that could work for you. Don't get attached to one home. All right, number 9 is really important for first-time home buyers. It's know what home ownership entails. And again, this may seem super obvious. If you've never owned a home before, you may not have the proper expectations. The reality is there's always a project going on as a homeowner. There's always something in the house that needs working on. It could be a big project, it could be a little small project that you've been putting off, but there's always something. There's always going to be some financial investment that's going on with a home, and things are going to break from time to time. Could be something small, could be something major. But it's really going to benefit you to do a little bit of research into like what you should be saving for when you own a home, right? So like you're going to need a new roof at some point. So based on how old that roof is and how much a roof costs, you probably want to set aside a little bit of money each year to build up for those costs. We call those capital expenditures. Okay, you may, pay for having your landscaping taken care of. You're going to need to change your AC filters every month. And occasionally things are going to break. It could be your HVAC in the middle of summer. It could be your heat in the middle of winter. You need to plan and have a reserve fund for repairs that are going to come up throughout home ownership. And what I've seen happen many times in the past is that people will close on a home and then get very frustrated with the realtor or with the inspection company they hired because something breaks, something goes wrong, and they don't think it should, right? And this is also very common with buyers that I work with that come from markets with like new homes, like Florida. They're not used to older homes that have deferred maintenance. And the reality is in Atlanta, there's a lot of older homes. So I'm not saying something's gonna go wrong with your home. I'm not saying your house is gonna fall apart. Of course, we do everything in our power to make sure you are not buying into a money pit, but especially if you've never purchased a home before, just do a little bit of research about what good home maintenance and upkeep looks like and how you're going to want to budget to save for those things that are going to come along the way. It'll help you feel more prepared, and it'll greatly reduce the fear, anxiety, and stress that comes up as home issues pop up. And number 10 on my list for top tips for buying your first home in Atlanta, Georgia would be, don't buy an incredibly unique home. Okay, now listen, this is number 10. This is probably the least important of anything that I've said on this list, but I have seen owners get burned by purchasing something that's just a little bit abnormal, right? And it doesn't even have to be abnormal. It could just be something that is far outside of what people are looking for in a given area. For instance, I just had a listing that has had a really difficult time selling. It's a split level home in an area where the consumers are looking for McMansions or one level ranches. And this has been a big challenge for this seller, and they've ended up having to reduce the price to compensate for having a split level home. Now, there's nothing wrong with split level homes. There is nothing wrong with split level homes. But a lot of times at split level homes, you do not have the traditional primary bedroom with ensuite bathroom that people like. You know, the walk-in bathroom with the separate shower and tub. A lot of times in split level homes, you get like this, you know, the master's kind of in the basement and it'll have a bathroom, but it won't feel like a true primary suite. And a lot of times with split level homes, the living room is going to be a little compressed. You're not going to have the wide open feel that you have in a ranch or a McMansion. And that is going to cut your buyer pool by quite a bit. Now, you're still going to be able to sell your home for a healthy profit, right? But it's something you should keep in mind. I'll give you another example. When I started my career, I was a listing agent for this, probably the most unique home I've seen in Atlanta. It was right off Moreland, and it was a smaller home that had had a couple additions over the years. And so you had the original structure, which was, you know, originally just a small old home that we have here in Atlanta, and then you had this hallway that was constructed leading to kind of like another structure. It was almost like two homes connected by a hallway. It didn't really look like that, but that's kind of what it was. It was unique. It was not a bad home. It was big. It had plenty of space. It had all the rooms that you wanted. It had, you know, your nice primary bedroom and bathroom, but that thing sat on the market for a long time. In fact, that seller ended up changing their plans. They still lived there. They didn't get the price that they wanted, and they just had to change their plans. So this is not a common scenario. Most homes are going to be very normal. You don't have to worry about this. But if you do come across a home that you've never seen before, that your realtor's never seen before, that's very different from the other homes in that neighborhood and the type of homes that people are looking for in the neighborhood, you may want to be cautious. You really, really may want to be cautious. And this does apply to other things like being on directly off a very busy road where there's high traffic, or being at the top of a hill with a steep driveway. But those are minor things that people are more used to. When it comes to the style of the home, again, people want a big living space. People want a big primary bedroom with a big, nice traditional primary bathroom that's right off of it. Most everyone is looking for this type of stuff, so it's just something to keep in mind. If you come across a really different home, you may want to consider how that's going to impact your resale value when you want to go to list it. So there you have it. Those are 10 tips for buying your first home in the Atlanta area. Obviously, this could apply to anywhere across the country that you're looking to buy. But if you take this information to heart, if you think about it, if you do some prep work and planning and researching what it takes to own a home, if you do your due diligence and research and hire the right realtor and hire the right lender and don't terminate over the small stuff and make sure there's no time crunch and all the other things that I mentioned here, I promise you, you're going to increase your chances of having a great buying experience with no regrets. So I really hope that provided you value. Feel free to comment any questions that you have. And as always, this is what I do in Atlanta, Georgia. I love it when my viewers become clients. So you can always call me, text me, email me, book a Zoom call with me using the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.